Hey, can y'all go to the, let me know how the sound is and the video is on the live stream? Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and then if one of y'all could watch the comment board.
Fear the Lord, yeah, is to hate evil. Pride and arrogance, evil, and of the evil way. I said the fear the Lord, yeah, is to hate evil. Pride and arrogance, evil, and of the evil way. I said the fear the Lord, yeah, is to hate evil.
Test 1, 2, mic check 1, 2. Hey, thanks Humble Sarat for that sound check on there. Appreciate it. We're gonna get started here in a minute. Just getting everything set up. Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Shabbat Shalom, everybody online. You have to bear with us with the video quality. My other computer started acting up. Let me make sure everything is 100. We're going to get started with current events. We got a couple interesting things. Let me make sure. Okay, so we're looking good there. Humble Sarat said the sound's good. Appreciate that. Just keep me informed on it.
No, we don't know.
Madison and Samantha, quiet down a little bit, please. All right. All right, so I think we're ready to get it moving. Let's see what we got. All right, so we ready to get started with current events, and the first one I'm gonna go into is a documentary that's coming out. Did y'all hear about this? Did y'all see that? It's I'm gonna play the trailer for it because it comes out on November 7th, and when you see this doctor on it, I think you might have seen him before. So, but let me pull it up. There you go.
The truth is, there is a concerted, organized, long-standing effort to eliminate African Americans from the human gene pool. Not just African Americans, by the way, but Africans. This is happening right now. You are being subjected to it. It's happening through multiple vectors of science, medicine, and food, and it's all being done covertly. So almost no one is aware of this. The entire mainstream media refuses to acknowledge this. The scientific community will say that none of this is true. It's undeniable. You will see there is a concerted, organized effort to eliminate blacks.
Okay, so that's an interesting document. I think it's going to be good. It comes out on the 7th. And a lot of stuff is stuff we already know. It's stuff that's biblical. But I think it's going to be a very interesting documentary. So, you know, I think it's something good to check out. I don't know if I've been talking a lot about this, the opioid epidemic. I think this week Trump declared it an emergency, you know, and of course he's allocating funds to help the people. During the crack epidemic, they allocated funds to crack down on people and lock folks up. Of course, this one, they want to help the people. They want to give them, you know, they're not going to lock them up. It's a problem they have. They criminalize crack cocaine. So, but anyway, this is an interesting article. If you want to go on the Jacksonville Hebrew Israelites group and just, you could read through it yourself. But it just talks about a doctor researched why Black Americans are less affected by the opioid epidemic. This is white folks' crack epidemic. That's what this is the equivalent of. And basically, through his research, what he found is that racism in the medical community, like basically the doctors don't prescribe painkillers to black people because they think they'll either sell them or get addicted to them. So majority of times when they could prescribe these drugs to black folks, they don't do it because they know that they figure they're gonna either sell them or get high on them. And what they ended up doing is through these opioid-based painkillers, they ended up getting their own people addicted to it. You know, so they have the epidemic. You know, and it's on them hard. I mean, the overdose rate is high, and basically what happens, they prescribe them these Percocets and Oxycontin or codeine, and then a cheaper, more powerful alternative is heroin. But then when their bodies become, I guess, when that isn't as strong, you know, and their body becomes used to that, then they end up getting on stronger stuff like which is fentanyl. So everybody's on fentanyl now, and that's what's killing people. So, all right. All right, so let's move on to the next one. That's just a morning spiritual combat video. I'm not really gonna go over this one. This is just a police chief who he beat a guy who was handcuffed. So typical stuff, nothing surprising there. This is interesting. North Korea crisis becoming unsolvable, experts warn, as Trump heads to Asia. And something I talked about last week was that you know, they started recruiting reserve pilots to come in and begin, or I'm sorry, retired pilots. They're starting to let them come back in because they're ready to do something short term. So, so they're not recruiting more pilots to train them up. They apparently they want to be ready for something in such a short term time frame that hold on one second. Yeah. so they want to be prepared for something in such a short-term time frame that they want experienced pilots that they could just bring up to speed within a couple months. Why they want to do that? Something else that came to mind, countries who try to do stuff against us, they feel that the holiday season is our weakest, most vulnerable point. So when they want to attempt something that's out of order to provoke us, they typically do it around the holiday season. So you be looking for this guy to launch a missile or do something crazy right around Christmas, Thanksgiving time frame. Okay. Okay, so I'll play this video. There's a good point I want to make here. So just check this out.
They're here in Shelbyville, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists that basically want to try to uproot what today's society is about. And we have a rule that wherever they go, we go. It takes a lot of studying and research. I mean, that's what Antifa really does most of. Everybody wants to talk about the violence. All we want to do is go out and punch Richard Spencer in the face. No. We do a lot of research, all of us, across the country to learn more and more about who's who and what's what. Sometimes they'll come to me to try to start sparring with me and try to start talking trash, and a couple of times it will be a case of I'm the first black person they ever talk to. One minute I'm going to be talking with them cordially. The next minute I'm probably punching them in that same mouth they're talking out of. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, the truth of the matter is I don't come to the rallies to dance that dance.
Well, so what communities are we allowed to organize in that you guys then go to your own spaces?
The one thing I've always learned is that fascists never stay within their borders. You can have your own separate state, but then you guys want to try to attack us. We have seen it before. Now, ever since Trump got into the White House, it's just been a full-time job, and that's a shame because we don't make any money doing this. I did go on a leave of absence at my current job, and now I am just doing this full-time.
Okay, so yeah, the reason I put this video up there is because I don't know what just happened to this thing. But the reason I put that video up there,
I shared it, and some people talking like this is popping up.
yeah. But the reason I put this video up there is because this is something I see a lot of with our people, and it's so-called trying to fight racism and stuff like that. And it's the typical obvious thing to do, but it's not the right thing to do. But it's just what seems right to. But this guy doesn't realize he's out there wasting his time doing nothing, and there's zero effect. It's inefficient. What he needs to be doing is spending his time helping the poor kids, the people struggling in the hood, getting the truth out to them somehow. And even me, I'm constantly trying to figure out ways to just get this word out better and more direct. Right now, just me doing these videos is the best I could do, but I'm working on things where I can be more efficient with what I'm doing. But I'm not concerned with other nations being about their nation, because that's all these white supremacists are about. In fact, at my this week at my job, we had an incident where they briefed us. It was actually yesterday at work. Some white supremacists were writing stuff, white power and all this stuff in the bathroom stalls on the wall. And So they briefed us about it, and I laughed about it. And I actually joked. I said, yeah, I'm going to write my address under that, and they could knock on my door, and we could have a discussion, you know, about how they feel, you know. But the reality is I could care less about it. I'm about helping my people. It's just confirmation. I already knew there was a bunch of people there that were that way. And it's just confirmation on a lot of the behaviors I was seeing there among people anyway. And they think they slick, they think they're hiding, but you know, you could just peep people, how people are acting, you know what they're about. And until they show me something different, I don't get caught up in all that. You know, I don't. You know, I don't think they're my friend or they're for my cause or they're for my benefit until they show me something different, you know. And to date, nobody's really showed me anything different. And I'm not saying there aren't white people out there who understand what we're dealing with. I'm not saying that. There's plenty of videos out there proving that, but it's few and far between. It's like, it's rare to see it, okay? And it's just, it's a warning to just, when you're at your workplace, be vigilant, man, because there's people out there that got it out for you, you know? So you have to, when you're on these jobs, know the game, know that, yeah, if they slip up, they'll give them some slack, some leeway, whatever. If you slip up, it's cutthroat. I was dealing with that this week at work. And the only solution to it is to turn up and work harder and be sharper and just be better at your job. And it's a win-win for you, because you can't get down to their level playing their little dirty games that they play, because then you'll just be just like them. All right. Now this next one, this next one is interesting. See that dude? Did y'all see this? That's a girl. That is a woman right there. Yes. And if you, yeah. So, I mean, the only way you'll figure that out is, you know, when it's bedtime, you know what I'm saying? And you might not. But the thing is, I saw, if you look at because this isn't a good picture of his chest or her chest, but if you look closer at her chest, you see where she got an operation, and you can see these cut marks, and it'll give you a little bit of a hint. But other than that, it's, yeah, you know. So it's they're getting good creative with this stuff. Go sit down. But yeah, you know, they're getting real good with these operations out here. But like I said, okay, hold on. Humble Sarat put something up there. Okay, he's asking, where can we watch the documentary when it comes out, YouTube or movie theaters? And I wonder if they talk about how interracial relationship is one of their methods to get rid of. Well, okay, so Humble Sarat's asking about that video I posted earlier, talking about the guy doing, about how they're trying to eradicate us as a people. You have to, I think it's coming out for free online, but if you go to that video in the Jacksonville Hebrew Israelites group, if you go to that video and then you go follow the link, you go to his website and it tells where it's coming out at. But I think it's coming out on YouTube for free, you know. But like I said, we just got to check either that or it's coming on some channel. But I'm pretty sure it's coming out on YouTube, because no theaters are going to entertain that. You know what I'm saying? The mainstream isn't going to go with that, you know? But, yeah, anyway, yeah, so this is a woman here, and you just got to keep an eye out. And I read in the comments on the original post of this, and this girl has a website, and she goes over her whole story. And what happened to this girl is her mother raised her as a boy and she didn't like it or something like that. She goes into it, but that's how it all came about. It's a sad state, man. And you're right. He said, okay, yeah. And what you find in that video, one of the things this is one of the agendas of eradicating us is this homosexuality. So, and last thing is this video right here is very good. I don't typically listen to a lot of female teachings because a lot of them is off, but this woman blew me away with her teaching, and my wife too. And like, I posted this video everywhere. Like, I might post it once a week everywhere because it was on point. I mean, she was bringing out some heavy truth. She was putting some stuff in the words that I hadn't figured out a good way to put it in the words, but she broke it down, man. She comes heavy. So, and you could tell she got the spirit on her. So she was really bringing some good stuff out. And I'm not going to go into this one. I'm going to go ahead and get into my lesson now. And the lesson, what the lesson is going to be about is it's going to be on wisdom. And even to be more specific about it, it's going to be, I'm going to be basically reading through Proverbs and just going through it slowly, breaking it down. So, you know, we're just going to go line by line through it. You know, if anybody has anything to add in, they can. So just give me a second to get things set up. All right, let's see. Okay. All right, so all right, let's see. I am going. All right, wisdom. So we're at Proverbs chapter 1. Verse 1. Okay. And let's see how that looks. Yep. Okay. All right, so this is Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1. And let me make sure I got it. Okay. So this is Proverbs 1, chapter 1, verse 1. It says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. And if you didn't know, Solomon was the wisest, was the wisest, or was it of his time, or period? Period? Okay. So it said, and in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 29, it says, and God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding exceeding much and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country and all the wisdom of Egypt. So I'm just bringing that out, making that point to show that Solomon was very wise. Okay. And he writes, so it says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. Okay? And what I'm going to do is we're going to break some of those words down. It is to know wisdom and instruction. So let's see what that word instruction is. Discipline, chastening, correction. Okay? So to know wisdom and discipline, chastening, and correction. And what we could also go into is, real fast, is wisdom. And it's skill, wisdom, shrewdness. Let's see. Wisdom. Skill in war, wisdom in administration, shrewdness, wisdom, prudence in religious affairs, skillful, wisdom, wisely, wit. Okay? And then judgment and equity. Okay? So let's see what judgment. Let's go into that word real quick. Okay, so judgment is acting or deciding a case, place, court, seat of judgment, process, procedure, litigation, case, cause, sentence, decision, execution, time. So acting of deciding a case. So that's a breakdown of judgment, you know. And equity. To give subtlety to the simple, to the young man, knowledge and discretion. So that word subtlety. Subtlety. Let's go into that real fast. And that word shrewdness, craftiness, prudence. Okay? Let's I want to do with that word real fast. It's just a refinement of thought, of argument, a fine point. Refinement in argument or speculation, use of fine distinctions. So a refinement of thought, you know? So just helping you to make wise decisions, wisdom. A wise man will hear and will increase learning. And a man of understanding shall attain unto wisdom, shall attain unto wise counsels. Okay? Let me go to counsels real quick. Alright. So, good advice, direction, counsel, guidance, good advice, wise counsel, direction, guidance. So what it's saying there is A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. So he'll be around wise understanding, around people who have, who can give him good direction and everything like that. And like I said, one of the big things I've learned in my age is just, you know, one of the things I've learned is, you know, getting older is just the importance of, like, even at work, of just, you realize you don't know, you know what I'm saying? Even working on these airplanes and working on cars, the more I learn, the more I know I don't, you know, I don't know. So when I get somebody telling me something, whether it's at work, it's my supervisor, or it's a coworker or whoever, say, hey Mike, you probably need to blah blah blah, instead of going, oh I know, like that. I really take it into consideration, because I've working on these planes, working on cars, just dealing with stuff in life. I realize there's blind areas in my understanding. You know what I'm saying? So it's like one of the big things is always being willing to consider and reconsider stuff that I think I'm solid in, you know, using biblical wisdom doing that, you know. Okay, to understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. Okay, so let's go into that dark sayings. Okay, let's see what that, and let's try to go into that scripture a little bit. That's verse 6. All right. So
I'm going to draw something for examples for you.
the dark sayings, it says riddle, difficult questions, parable, enigmatic sayings or questions, perplexing sayings or questions. So to understand those is wisdom, because there's some stuff in there that in the word that's hard to understand. And understanding some of these proverbs, I didn't understand years ago when I read them. And when I say understand, I'm not just saying I get the meaning, but understand it in a point of, you know, understand it in my life, you know. Go ahead.
So let's say dark. Does that mean like evil, or is it saying it's hard to understand?
Hard to understand. Yeah. Let me go back. I'll pull it back up. Good question. So I'll go back.
Yeah, when you hear that, it's like.
Yeah. And because I've seen that. Okay, there I am. So yeah, it says. This is that word here. This is the meaning of it here, of dark sayings. It says riddle, difficult question, parable, enigmatic saying or question, perplexing saying or question. So it's a question. It's like a verse in there that's kind of hard to understand. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a riddle.
This is just an example for me.
It says dark, obscure utterance. So it's kind of vague to understand. It's not real obvious and simple, you know? So. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay? And like I said, being wise, being wise or smart or whatever you want to call it, you're going to find it's not about how much you know or think you know. You're going to find that it's about being willing to just listen to other people, really. Because at my job, what I found is the people that are in those in the highest paid positions and stuff like that, they're listeners. And like I talked to my shop foreman, he's over all the supervisors. He's in a pretty high position. His name's Jim. And when you talk to him, you start talking to him and he's locked in on what you're saying. And he lets you finish everything you're saying. And then he gives you a good answer back. And it's just something I've seen in my career. It's like all the people in the high positions are good listeners and they're not coming with their opinion real hard. And that's something I'm learning to do. It's just because I did not have that skill in the past. But it's something I've been developing, and as I've developed in it, I've seen the benefits of it, in my career, in my relationship with my wife, in a lot of areas, is it's just learning to just sit there and listen and really consider what she said to me, or with my supervisor, with my coworkers, or with whoever's saying to me. Just really sit there and not despise instruction and wisdom and other people's knowledge, And sometimes people come telling you stuff and it's complete useless garbage. Sometimes people come telling you stuff and some of it you keep and the rest you toss out. But always, be willing to take that into consideration. Okay? So let's get back to it. And like I said, if any of y'all got anything to add in here or online, just, chime on in. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and knowledge. And for a good chunk of my life, I was a fool, I thought I knew. It says, my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. And a funny thing, when I went when I went in the military, because my parents used to tell me stuff over and over again. Then I went in the military, and I wasn't in the military 6-7 months, and I called back home and I was like, now I understand. I was like, now I see what y'all was saying. He's like, now I understand. Like, I used to, because I'd see what they were trying to tell me, and it's good. They got me to the point where I could get in the military and then grow even further from where they had got me. But I understood what they were trying to say to me and what they saw in me. And even now I talk to my brother, they say stuff, and they know me real good, and it's like, sometimes it's hard to take into consideration what people are telling you, because it's pointing right at that sore spot that you have a reflex from considering, but you always gotta be willing to humble down and look at yourself. So, all right, let's see. All right. So it says, my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. Okay. For they okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm on verse 10 now. All right, there we go. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and while as those that go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substance, we shall fill our house with spoil. Cast thy lot among us, let us all have one purse. My son, walk not thou in the way with them, refrain thy foot from their path. For their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird. And they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of owners thereof. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. So, and real quick, what it's talking about is something I experienced. I can recall back in my youth when I was very unwise, and I remember being in a situation like that, sitting in a car at an ATM with some of my more wickeder friends, watching people go to the ATM, plotting on getting ready to rob one of them, you know, and just, you know, and it's funny because years before I met all those people and I started hanging out with all those people, I gave my life to the Lord and I sincerely did it, but it took years for me to really come into that truth. And it's like, I think back to situations like that where I was sitting there getting ready to rob people and do other wicked things, and it's like that night, you know, we didn't do anything, we didn't rob anything. Yeah, go ahead and get that. But yeah, so we didn't rob anybody, but we did. You know, he held me and he stopped that from happening. Yeah, but so he kept us then. All right. So let me continue on. A lot of interruptions. All right. So wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief places of concourse, in the opening of the gates. In the city she uttereth her words, saying, how long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity, and the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Okay? So if you hate knowledge, you're a fool. It's basically defining it right there for you, you know? Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. Because I have called and ye refuse, I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded. But ye have set out not all my counsel, and with none of my reproof. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh, and desolation and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you. So again, this isn't, what we're reading here is, it's not talking about some superstitious, oh, I did this and that, this is happening. The stuff that happens in your life and the situations you go through are a direct cause of you not having godly biblical knowledge in those areas. Like, I struggled for years in the workplace and jobs and relationships, stuff like that, because I didn't have the biblical knowledge of how to deal with these situations. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is verse 28. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. Okay? And like I said, it's like looking back on all the situations in my life, it was just a lack of biblical knowledge. At Madison and Samantha, y'all play in the room, okay? But yeah, it was all caused by that. Like you can look at any issue in your life, in your situation, and I'm telling you, there's nothing from my past that I went through that I don't see where, hey, it's right here in the Bible. I could have alleviated all these issues if I had just went this route. And the Bible is literally that practical. And I'm not going to say that there's not certain things that can happen in your life that God puts there, maybe for his own reason or whatever, because, you know, you read Paul and he had the thorn in the flesh, whatever that was, you know what I'm saying? But for the most part, like any problem, like I couldn't sit there and say, hey, I'm addicted to alcohol, or I had that spirit of lust and that was my thorn in the flesh. Nah, I used to make that excuse back in the day. But then when I really supplicated and really seeked after the Most High for that, the way he tells you to do it in the Bible, when I really was seeking after him to get that problem taken care of, it was immediate. You know what I'm saying? So okay, so the let's continue on. Then for that they hated. So it says, for that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel. They despise all my reproof. Okay. And then real quick, something you see thoroughly all through the whole entire Bible from beginning to end about our people is we do not like correction. And I could say in my life, I for the longest, I did not like correction at all. And what happened in my life is, boy, I got every interruption going on here today. I tell you what. The FedEx person then came, my computer messed up, people calling me, you name it. But anyway, in my life, I could say just personally, for the longest, I did not like correction. And then you keep doing the same thing and it gets painful and more painful and more painful, and the pain gets worse and worse. And that's how God works on you. And it gets more and more painful to the point you just get desperate, and then you're willing to begin to receive correction. And you get to the point where you'll just, you know, any correction, you know, you'll just receive it. Any instruction, any wisdom or whatever, you'll receive it, you know, and you'll begin taking it into consideration. Then you'll begin to see true change happen in your life. Okay? So let's go on to the next verse. And to continue what I was saying, so yeah, in my life I saw where, because even it got to the point where I was begging, like I was at my job and I was asking myself, I was asking the Lord, I was like, Lord, what the heck is it? Like, there was all types of stuff going on at work and in my life, and I was like, you know, I see other people just persevering, and it was just him trying to get me to stop and begin to look at myself, you know, and that's how he works, and it works. But and then when I really got into the Word and I really started reading the Old Testament, I saw my life in how Israel was. They were hard-headed. He correct them. They wouldn't receive it. They want to do stuff their own way, and it gets so painful that they'd have to turn back to him. And that's,
Stubbornness.
yeah, that's stubborn. Yeah. And it's like the deception that is just so strong out here in the world, and people are so deceived. He has to get you to that point where you just get so frustrated that you turn back to him. So, all right. But like I said, you see that all through the word. I mean, and I think it's Isaiah where he just warns. Was that Isaiah where he said he's gonna harden his face to their? Huh?
Jeremiah.
So you see it in Jeremiah, and he just warns them how stubborn they are, you know, and how stubborn do you got to be to get God frustrated? That's pretty daggone stubborn. And it's funny where you see our own people, like when you run into some just straight ignorant hood niggas, you see our own people hating our people. Like when you see our true ignorant ghetto people, it's like folks get frustrated with them. Our own people get frustrated with them because like we glorify in our wickedness. You know, any wickedness you could throw us in, we can glorify in it somehow. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, so it's this is Proverbs chapter 1 verse 30. It says, "They would none of my counsel, they despise all my reproof. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices." So he's saying he'll just give you over to it, and it's going to destroy you if you keep going. Like if you don't heed to it, and he gives you over to that fruit, and you'll just keep banging your head into the wall and just getting the same results and worse results, and then eventually you'll just be destroyed, you know. And you see that a lot, unless you realize, like I did, I was like, man, what is this? You know, what's going on, you know? So, for the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. So what would the prosperity of fools, what would that be? I would think that'd be riches or something, you know, worldly riches. But whosoever hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil. And in the fear of evil, it's like you're not afraid of the police, and you're not walking around scared of all this stuff because you understand how things work now, because you lined up with God's word. You following his word, so you don't have to walk around scared of everything. And I remember, man, I remember back in those days when I was off, I was fearful. I had just this deep fear in me because I didn't know, you don't know why you're getting the results you're getting. You just think, and you just don't know why they're coming, where they're coming from. You just think it's random, and you're just waiting for the next crazy result to pop up in your life, and you don't know where it's coming from or how to deal with it or why it's there, you know. So like I said, getting that wisdom, you know, you'll be able to, you know, you'll have understanding on that, on things like that. So yeah, that was the first chapter of Proverbs there. And from time to time, we'll just progress through it depending on what I feel moved to teach on. But it'll be a process. But yeah, we'll go through Proverbs. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and then Brother Adonai, who is going to get up here, and he's going to teach a little bit about how the Maccabees and some topics based on that. So
Maybe if we can get this PowerPoint.
yeah, I'll get it up and going. Let's see. So Proverbs. Okay, Exodus production. All right, and this is Exodus Productions. So we're gonna let a couple songs play on here. And like I said, that's Exodus Productions. He jamming on that one. I like that one. All right, shalom, y'all. With that, so we're gonna pray, and then we're gonna get into Brother Adonai's message. And where? There we go. So, okay, everybody, let's face east.
Matt, Sammy. Get in here.
Where that now?
Rukata Yahuwah Aleinu Malaka Alam. Yahuwah, thank you for this day. Thank you for your Shabbat. A sign and a covenant between you and Yisrael from generation to generation forever. Yahuwah, help us to guard, keep, and fulfill your requirements for the Shabbat as you have required of us to be pleasing in your sight. Help us to rest. And as we rest, Yahuwah, and as we gather together as a set-apart convocation, we ask that that your presence would be among us, that you would restore our minds, our bodies, and our spirits, Yahuwah. That you would refresh us, that you would teach us, that you would send forth your Ruach HaKodesh, your set-apart spirit, to lead us into all truth, Yahuwah. Let your joy be in this place. Let your shalom be in this household. Thank you for this family, for opening up their house to us, Yahuwah. Thank you for their hospitality. Let your barakat be upon them, Yahuwah. Yahuwah, teach us your word. Reveal to us what you have in store for us, Yahuwah. Give us hearts to receive, minds to receive, and spirits to receive from you. To you be all esteem, honor, and praise. B'Shem Yahushua HaMashiach. Hallelujah.
So yeah, what you could do on the slides with the small words, I'll bring it up. You can talk for a couple seconds or whatever, and I'll make it go into it. But it should, don't even worry about it. Don't let it trick you up in there. All right.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom. This is Brother Adonyahu. I just wanted to bring forth a lesson, an instruction in righteousness, continuing from what we went through last week. And this week we'll touch on a few subjects and then get into Chanukah, the Feast of Dedication. So why instruction and righteousness? The word Torah actually means instruction, and according to what Yahuwah has given us, it says that when we do His Torah, that it shall be our righteousness. And Paul talks about that the law is spiritual, but we'll get into that in a later lesson. But let's continue. Instruction and righteousness. Chanukah, the Feast of Dedication. So we'll start with our confession. I confess that Yahuwah is the only true Elohim, and Yahuwah At is His messenger. And when I say Yahuwah At, That's the one that we recognize as our Mashiach, Yehusha HaMashiach. That before he was given the human name Yehusha, he had a greater name, which is Yahuwah. He's Yahuwah At, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. So if we could all together say the Shema.
Yeah. Y'all hear what he said?
All together.
Mm-hmm. All right, and the Shema is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. All right, so it begins, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahuwah, your Elohim, Yahuwah is one. And we're going to say the beginning in Hebrew. Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yasharah.
Yahuwah Eloheinu.
Yahuwah Elohim.
Yahuwah Chad.
Yahuwah
Achad.
Achad.
It's that chet sound, okay?
We don't make that sound too much in English.
Yeah. Alright, so, and then he goes on, we'll continue in English. You shall love Yahuwah your Elohim.
You shall love Yahuwah your Elohim.
With all your heart.
With all your heart.
And with all your mind.
And with all your mind.
And with all your strength.
And with all your strength.
Okay. So if we had a pledge of allegiance, that would be our pledge of allegiance.
Oh.
It's called the Shema.
Yeah, the Shema.
And that's in Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy chapter 6.
S-H-E-M-A?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 All right.
Alright.
So continue with what we have been speaking about. We've been talking about culture, and according to the definition of culture, culture defines our laws, our standards, our morals, our worldview, our fashion, our music, our food, our ethnicity. All this is wrapped up into culture. And as we talked about before, the Torah that Yahuwah has given us is the culture of Yisrael. This is our culture. You can go to the other slide. So we were talking in previous lessons about the clothing that Yahuwah instructed us to wear. And here you see we're going to see some images of ancient Israelites and how they wore their clothing. Of course, these aren't Polaroids, but it does give you at least enough detail that you can actually see, the band at the bottom of their robes and the tzitzit or the fringes. So you can see clearly that these were images of Israelites and how, even today, I was introduced to Mike and a lot of the other, people in the group was a brother just noticed the way what I was wearing and introduced himself to me. Now, if I was not keeping the command of clothing, if I was not keeping the Torah of clothing, how would that brother have known, that I followed the commandments and would have had the unction to even talk to me? All right, and go to the next image. Okay, so this is another image of Hebrews being sent into exile. This is an Assyrian relief. So you can actually see how they're basically wearing ponchos over their robes, and on the poncho it has the band of blue with the tzitzit on it. And again, you can see on their heads they're wearing the kufi or the bonnet. The next one. Okay. Here's some musicians. Again, you can see they have the cornrows going on, and they have the long robes with the fringes at the bottom, and they even have a belt around their waist. Okay, so, and again, as we talked about before, this would be a more formal dress, because you can see it's a more formal dress because it's long, it goes down to the feet. Now, if you're out in the field, a man would wear something that maybe would go to his knees, but this is something that's more formal. You can see according to its length. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So we're gonna hit up some things, so that we understand, actually when we read the Bible, when we read the accounts, there's some terminology that's being used there that we really don't understand, because again, we're in a foreign culture. So understanding our native culture helps us to understand what the ancients were writing about, and it makes the narrative come alive to us. So the term "gird up your loins." All right, 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 46. And the hand of Yahuwah was on Elijah, or Eliyahu, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Yezreel. So you have this term, girded up his loins. What does that mean? And then we have 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13. Wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end of the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Yahushua HaMashiach. So we have a literal meaning, and then in Peter he's talking about symbolically girding up the loins of your mind. But if you don't know what girding up your loins means, how are you going to understand what girding up the loins of your mind means? Right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to see, what does girding up your loins actually mean? All right, go to the next slide. All right, so this is an illustration of how to gird up your loins. So you see a man dressed in a thobe, or a long robe that's down to his feet. Now, when you're in this long robe down to your feet, it's very hard to move about quickly if you're not familiar with wearing a thobe. That's why I wear long robes with a split on the side, because I have a wide stride, and sometimes it gets frustrating for me to be so restricted. But you see, he's wearing a long robe, and if he's going to get, be able to run or go into action to fight or do something like that, he has to actually pull up his robe and tie it together so that his legs don't get caught up in his robe. So to gird up your loins, that's what it means, to tie up your robe to get ready for action. So that's when it says that Eliyahu girded up his loins and he ran. That's what it means. He adjusted his robe so that he would be able to run. And then what Peter was talking about in 1 Peter, saying girding up the loins of your mind, means make your mind ready for action.
Mm.
You see?
His word, man.
All right, but if you don't understand where all this terminology is coming from, a lot of this is lost when you read it.
I mean, it's in the Bible, like, repeatedly.
Right.
Gird up the loins, gird up the loins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
There's many passages that talk about girding up your loins, and this is what it actually means.
All right.
Okay, so we talked about, last week about men and women's clothing, and the passage that's popularly misunderstood, written by Paul, 1 Corinthians, talking about, you know, the man not being covered and the woman being covered. And we looked into the meaning behind that, and actually Paul was saying that the man should not wear a veil like a woman. So you see the image on the left, you have a couple there. You see that the woman has a veil and the man has his head wrapped in a turban. So this is the turban or the mitre that's mentioned in the Bible. And then on the left, on the right hand side, you have a family picture. I actually talked to this brother. He's in Nigeria. I believe he's from the Yoruba tribe, if I remember correctly. And you can see that the father and the boys have the bonnet or the kufi on their heads, and the mother and daughter have the head wrap or the veil on their heads. And of course, on the shoulders of the males, they have the tallit. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about this tallit, or the prayer shawl that you commonly see Ashkenazim and, you know, some people that are, you know, following Judaism. They wear this kind of thing, and you notice that it has the gadil, the 4 gadil on the 4 corners that we talked about. But of course, we know that the Ashkenazim, they call those the tzitzit. And also, it has the tzitzit running across the hem with a border of blue. So it has the 2 requirements. The thing about it is, when you read those 2 passages in Deuteronomy and in Numbers, it doesn't mention anything about prayer, does it? It says you shall put this on your garment, but it doesn't say you should wear this when you pray, right? All right, but those that practice Judaism, they only wear this when they pray. But that's not what it said in the passages. It says you shall wear this on your garments. Okay, so they've turned it into a religious thing where when they go to pray, then they'll put it on. All right, but that's not, you know, the context that it's used when you actually read it in the Torah. All right. Again, going back to 1 Corinthians, talking about a man should not veil himself. You see on the left, the man, he wears that prayer shawl, and he's wearing a veil. And then on the right-hand side is a House of Fulani woman. You should see that she's wearing a veil, and the veil is for the woman. All right. Now here's a foreigner demonstrating how the ancient style tallit was actually made or actually worn. So we saw the prayer shawl before, but this is the ancient style tallit. It's actually worn over the robe, and it's like a vest, and you tie it together with a belt. So this is how they used to wear it during ancient times.
All right, bear with me one second. Make this bigger.
Again, just the color.
That'll work. Not what I meant to do, but.
Okay. You skipped this slide.
Editing on the fly. I'll move it up as you read.
Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about the tefillin or the phylacteries. Phylacteries is a Greek word. Tefillin is a modern Hebrew. And this is what you see the modern practitioners of Judaism, when they pray, they'll tie a box on their forehead and they'll tie a box around their left arm. And in those boxes, there's written in Hebrew these 4 passages. Exodus 13:9, and it shall be for a sign upon your head, your hand, and for a memorial between your eyes, that the law of Yahuwah may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand did Yahuwah bring you out of Egypt. And it shall be for a sign upon your hand, and as a totafot between your eyes. For with a mighty hand did Yahuwah bring us forth out of Egypt. That's Exodus 13:16. You shall bind them as a sign upon your arm, and they shall be as totafot between your eyes. That's Deuteronomy 6:8. And move it up a little bit.
You said move it.
Up, yeah. These ancient men who committed themselves to following the Torah, committed themselves to being set apart, actually wore these things on their foreheads. So they actually physically had the Father's name on their foreheads in these tefillin. Right? Okay. All right. So we'll look at how the ancient tefillin actually looked like. So this is a replica of what was actually found in Qumran. All right, so you see, like, that piece of paper would have these scriptures written in them, on them, and then it would be wrapped up and tied and sealed within that small leather pouch. So you see on the leather pouch there's 4 sections. So each of those passages.
Now, was that tied around their head?
Yeah, it was tied around their head. Okay, so it's just a small band, like a small headband.
Now, what was the metal for? Is that
No,
metal, or what is?
That's a coin. That's just to show the size.
Oh, the size, how small it was.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That is very small.
Yeah. Okay. So and there's another example on the next slide, right? So again, you know, this is a small band that they were actually wearing.
Oh, I see. If they kind of tied it up.
Right.
And then I guess they just folded it.
So yeah, they sewed it.
Okay.
It was they used leather. So it was actually sewn into the leather.
Okay, weatherproof.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Next slide.
That is very small.
Yeah. And this would be an example of the tefillin that they would actually put on their arm. So that's what this is. I actually have scripture in here. Next slide. Okay. So when in Matthew 23 verse 5, you have Yahushua talking about these men, these teachers of the law that, you know, do everything to show off to show off for people, you know. And he says, but all their works they do to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries or their tefillin and enlarge the borders of their garments. We talked about this last week, about the border of the garment is actually the gadil. All right. So it's saying that these teachers of the law, that they're putting these things on as for a show, so that they're making their phylacteries or the tefillin big, and they're making their gadil very, very long. So we'll look at some pictures of this. Okay, so you see that big box on his head, okay?
My arm looked like RoboCop or something.
All right. So you can see the difference between the ancient style that the The Essenes would wear was very small, a small headband,
Yeah, look how long them.
and look at
Down
the deal, right? So you can see the difference in, what, and again, the purpose of these things weren't just for prayer, that you're supposed to wear these things, right?
Culture vultures.
Right.
Messed it up.
And again, you see that according to their custom, according to Judaism, they wear the arm tefillin on the left hand.
Why was that significant?
Because, well, I read in some Mishnah that they talk about that it's close to the heart.
Okay.
But if I'm not wrong, I asked the nurse, the heart is actually in the middle, right?
Yeah, it's right here. It's closer to the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, if you understand, Middle Eastern and African culture, the left hand, you don't touch someone with your left hand because the left hand is what you use to clean yourself with. But they tie this tefillin on their left hand. So, take it how you want to take it. Okay, so now we're going to get into Hanukkah.
Did I skip one?
No, that's right.
All right, hold on.
Oh,
No, I did. Okay. Let me,
So again, it has that het sound, so it's Hanukkah. Hanukkah. It's something a little bit difficult for us English speakers to pronounce.
watercolor, fill color. Oh, there, font color. Nope. Oh. There it is. Is this all of it? Or
Yeah.
did I cut some of it off?
No, that's good. Okay. All right. Of course, this is a definition straight out of Wikipedia. So this is Hanukkah is, they say Jewish, but of course we understand that it's a Yehudi set apart day or a memorial day, commemorating the rededication of the set apart temple, the second temple in Jerusalem, at the time of the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire. Hanukkah is observed for 8 nights and days, starting on the 25th day of Kislev, according to the Hebrew calendar, which may occur at any time from late November to late December in the Gregorian calendar. It is also known as the Festival of Lights and the Feast of Dedication. All right, so that's a brief, overview of it. So we're going to get into what actually happened during that time. Why is this? How did this become a memorial? What's the story behind it? Okay, so first we're going to deal with the bad guy first, the villain of the story. So we're going to talk about Antiochus.
Next?
Yeah, next slide.
Yeah, I've done a decent amount of studying on him.
Who is this?
And there's a bunch of them, though. Bunch of people who discontinued in his...
All right, this is Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus the Fourth. Okay, let's see if we can. Yeah. So, Antiochus the Fourth was the 8th ruler of the Seleucid Empire. He gave himself the surname Epiphanes, which means the visible God. All right, so when you get into the book of Daniel, this is the one who proclaimed himself to be God. Okay, people are looking at some future, and a lot of these prophecies have already been fulfilled. But you know, he and Jupiter were identical. So Jupiter is another name for Zeus. Both are foreign gods. He acted as though he really were Jupiter, and the people called him Epimanes, meaning the madman. He was violent, bitter against the Yahudim, and was determined to exterminate.
Make it bigger.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you. And was determined to exterminate them and the religion. He devastated Jerusalem in 168 BC, defiled the temple, offered a pig on its altar, erected an altar to Jupiter or Zeus, prohibited temple worship, forbade circumcision on pain of death, sold thousands of Yehudi families into slavery, destroyed all copies of the scripture that could be found, and slaughtered everyone discovered in possession of such copies, and resorted to every conceivable torture to force Yahudim to renounce their religion. This led to the Maccabean revolt, one of the most heroic feats in history. The Antiochus bust discovery is important in the study of biblical archaeology. It reveals an image of the man who is mentioned in the book of Daniel. Okay. So again, you know, this Antiochus Epiphanes, he called himself Epiphanes, which means he called himself God. But of course, we called him Epimanes, which means madman.
Antiochus. So Epimanes. Good. Keep that in mind. Now there was Epiphanies the second, third, fourth, but it was this one when he got in. That's when.
Yeah. This is the guy that Daniel was talking about, Antiochus the Fourth.
During, like I said, his time where they changed the priesthood.
Yeah.
Wait, during his time, what?
They actually changed the priesthood. That's where the priesthood became polluted.
Oh.
It went from the line of Aaron no more.
Right. Okay, so Antiochus IV usurped the throne of his brother Seleucus IV, who died. Antiochus was determined to Hellenize Israel and make them a people who were worthy of bordering Egypt. He needed a loyal Hellenized population there. So what does Hellenize mean? Does anyone know?
That's where they became like Greek. They followed the Greek customs.
Right. Hellen means Greek. So Hellenize means to be follow the Greek culture. All right. So, and we see again when we talk about culture and what has happened to us today. You see that Antiochus was determined to Hellenize or make Israel, to change the culture of Israel. Okay, and that's why today I put such a focus on culture in Torah, because we have to reverse all of that. Okay, the Yahudim were quickly becoming more Greek than any other time in history. A group of Yahudim came to Antiochus with a plan. They proposed that the high priest Onias III should be removed and his Hellenized brother Jason should take his place. They should set up a Greek constitution and coin Greek money. Okay, so this is what happened. You can read this during in the book of Maccabees, that there were a group of Yahudim, of Hebrews, that were on board with this plan. They loved the Greek culture. They were down with speaking Greek. They even changed their names to Greek names. So they went to Antiochus and said, you know, if you really want to Hellenize Israel, you got to get rid of the high priest and put in a priest that is who will follow the Greek custom.
That's what America does does now. They get a leader in it.
Right. So that's where the priesthood became polluted, because the priesthood belonged to the Levites, and not just the Levites, but specifically the sons of Aaron or Aaron. So this is what happened. That's why when you get to the time of the New Testament, a lot of the priests that were serving in the priesthood at the time of the Mashiach were not actually sons of Aaron. And that's why you had splinter groups like the Essenes who left Jerusalem and went to the wilderness in Qumran. But again, if you don't know all this history, when you get into the New Testament, you really don't understand what's going on.
And you need the Apocrypha and to study the Greek history, kind of to tie all that in.
Right.
Okay.
The plan was followed, and all the Jews were outraged, or the Yahudim were outraged. It was the first time since the Babylonian captivity that a non-Yahudi government had interfered with the priesthood, treating the sacred office as though it were nothing other than a governmental office. But the worst was yet to come. Now the Hellenizers had full control of the government in Jerusalem, and they began to build gymnasiums within the city and encouraged the young to spend all their time there. Sounds familiar, right?
That's like sports today.
Right.
Wow.
The young priests...
Ain't nothing changed.
The young priests engaged in sports. Jerusalem was filled with Greek styles, Greek clothes, Greek names, Greek language, and worst of all, Greek religion and Greek morals. Nothing new under the sun, right? So notice Greek styles, Greek clothes. So when people talk about clothes doesn't really matter, obviously in our Hellenization, it mattered to the Greeks. Greek names, people say our names don't matter. Well, they made sure they changed their names. And in fact, you know, every captivity we went in, they would change our names. Greek language, some people say it's not important to learn Hebrew.
Well, I hear they got the skinny jeans. Back then, though, they basically be naked and stuff.
Yeah, when they would, I mean, that's what gymnasium means.
That Greek culture is just gay as heck anyway. They're like lust-filled.
Yeah. Gymnasium comes from the word gumnos, which means naked.
Wow.
So they would, when they do sports, they do sports naked. The most radical Hellenizers felt that things were not moving fast enough, so they convinced Antiochus to remove Jason and replace him with Menelaus, who was not even a member of the priestly family. Okay, so again, you see the pollution of the priesthood. Menelaus had no sympathy for the Yehudi traditions whatsoever and was only concerned about his own power. The temple treasury did not contain enough money to pay Antiochus what he had promised, so he sold some of the set-apart vessels of the temple to raise the money he needed. It was now the goal that Judaism was to be destroyed. In the mind of Antiochus, to be un-Hellenized was stiff-necked nonsense. If Judaism stood in the way of then Judaism was to be destroyed, so he gave the orders. So you see, Antiochus' whole point was to destroy the culture, wipe out the culture. You'll find when you read in Maccabees, it was even illegal for a Yehudi to call himself a Yehudi. You couldn't even refer to yourself by your own nationality. You had to refer to yourself as Greeks. That's why when you get into the New Testament, it talks about there's no division between Yehudi and Greek. The Greek isn't talking about Greeks, it's talking about Hellenized Israelites.
So it's no different. No, okay.
Because he's saying the two become one in Mashiach, because he's making the two houses one. That's what it was all prophesied from the beginning. He was making the two houses one. But let's continue with Antiochus. All right, next slide.
All right, let me get this set up. If you got anything, just while I'm setting it up, you can continue to talk.
So we see that, why was it so important for Antiochus? Why was it such a big deal for him to destroy the culture? Well, again, Torah is our culture. We weren't allowed to circumcise. We weren't allowed to keep the Shabbat. We weren't allowed to do a lot of things. Why? Because all these things set us apart. And the whole point of even not so much Alexander, but the ones that came after him, they wanted a unified empire, everyone the same. And when we set ourselves apart, that goes against their whole agenda. But we know that Yahuwah has called us to be set apart. It's a commandment. He tells us not to follow the ways of the heathen.
Something not connected to the internet or something.
That's Zoom, it's not the phone.
But it's going backwards. Yeah. So, all right, we're gonna do the best we can.
Okay. I can't even read that.
All right. What we saying? Oops.
Can you change the color of the font?
It's for some reason it's saying reconnecting. So. Yeah, it's all. I'm gonna need to figure a different way of doing it. So I have to talk with y'all about it.
Okay. But again, when we look at Antiochus, we see the same mindset in the world today. That they call America what, the melting pot. Yeah, we all should be the same. And what happened when we saw the video that I shared, the foreigner talking about Black Americans should unite and we have all this power and everything like that. That we're being corporate America is investing all this wealth and resources to keep us divided, which is true. Because what happened when we united? I mean, it's not impossible because it's happened in the past. You have Black Wall Street, but what happened? We separate ourselves, and then they come and destroy what we build. Okay, and if you're familiar with Marcus Garvey and his movement, they came in, sabotaged his whole movement. That was the beginning of Edgar Hoover, right? Mm-hmm. And his whole dealings with the CIA and his divide and conquer strategies.
And you're saying they use the same strategy back then. The Greco-Roman Europeans.
Well, I mean, you know, they had the same goal, is that everyone should be one.
They took the word, like you say, we'll lose them, was set apart. They took that away.
That's why they demonized the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X, but then they put a version of Malcolm X, Martin Luther, and they raised him up because he's the peaceful one that wanted to, you know, be integrated.
Initially.
Yeah.
And then when he woke up to it, they knocked him off.
Yeah. So they show a version of Martin Luther King.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, but they don't show the real one.
Like you say, you read his last, like I read the thing about his last 3 years of living before they killed him.
Yeah.
How he woke up and he was trying to stop all that integration thing. He was like seeing what they was doing, but
He was
too late.
he was telling them to boycott the banks and yeah, hold on, y'all. Yeah, I don't. It's connected. It's just the internet went down. I don't think I'm gonna do it this way anymore. We gotta come up with another way. This live
What
thing
you
don't.
How you trying to do it?
It don't work. Oh, the internet's gone. It's off. It just. I mean, I'm connected to my wireless router back there, but it's recording, so we can press. Well, now your stuff's gone too. I mean, if you can you read it off your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this ain't. I think from now on I'm gonna do it. I'm just pre-recorded, and then we could just sit here and talk or something. You know, or everybody need to just give an idea how better way. Because we got people who watch.
Yeah, like I said, I had all those guys who I was doing right. They was hitting me up saying, they was asking what the search. I was telling them spiritual combat. So they said,
I mean, there were a lot of interruptions, you know, today. So, you know, we just got to figure out a good way to do it. All right, we back up.
There's a lot of things like, well, a lot of people see me in the way that I'm dressed. They assume that I'm Muslim.
yeah, that's what I said.
You know, why is that? Because not all Muslims, you know, some Muslims, they set themselves apart. And they retain their culture even when they go to different countries.
Yeah.
You know, of course, some Muslims are just like Christians. They, you know, adapt wherever they are. But, you know, some Muslims, they, and Muslim culture, Arab culture is Hebrew culture. They were able to retain the culture because they were never conquered by Europe.
So that's why nobody ever confused you for Israelite. They be like, oh, you always a Muslim.
Yeah, this I don't like when stuff. I like stuff to run smooth, so I'm gonna be really doing some thinking how to make this better for everybody.
They made them play. See, they made them play daytime.
slide 23. Probably more. There you go. So we're still talking about, you know, the effect of Antiochus upon Israel. Antiochus IV, or Antiochus Epiphanes, so-called. The Syrian army marched into Jerusalem, and many of the people were killed and others escaped to the hills. Only the known Hellenists were allowed to remain. Orders were given: no Sabbath, no set-apart days, no circumcision. A statue of Zeus Antiochus was placed in the temple above the altar. This is what Daniel talks about. The most detestable animals, the pig, were brought and sacrificed on the altar. So he's actually going into the temple. He placed a bust, a statue of himself, because he called himself God, you know, Zeus, inside the temple, and then he sacrificed pigs on the altar. An abominable act was perpetrated on Kislev 25, 168 BC, according to the book of Maccabees, that left the Yahudim people desolate. They call this the abomination of desolation in Daniel. Okay, so the abomination of desolation. But Yahushua taught that this was a preliminary occurrence of a greater fulfillment coming in the last days, during the 17th week of Daniel. Okay, so what happened here, there was a greater fulfillment that's happening in our days. So we'll go through this and see what Antiochus actually did and compare it to what's happened to our people in these days. But we'll continue.
Next slide.
And now we're into the book of Maccabees. So what we previously went over with Antiochus gives us the background story of what we're going to deal with in the book of First Maccabees. So this is First Maccabees chapter 4, starting in verse 36. And then said Yehuda and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate this sanctuary. So Yehuda called Maccabah, which means the hammer. So Yehuda Maccabah and his brothers, they were the ones that his family led the revolts against Antiochus. They actually led the people who wanted to be faithful to the Torah. They all left the city and went into the wilderness and kind of had guerrilla warfare with Antiochus and his troops.
Would you say we invented guerrilla warfare?
I don't know if we invented it, but we definitely used it.
Yeah, especially him when he said Maccabees. He said he preferred that type.
Yeah.
Smaller.
So they got together and said, let's go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. So this is after Antiochus has done all his damage in the temple and desecrated the temple. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing on the courts as in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, the priest chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes. And we talked about this before. An expression of grief was to tear your clothing. Right? They rent their clothes and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried toward Shemaim, or toward heaven. Then Yehuda appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as have pleasure in the Torah, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into an unclean place. So they actually went in and took everything that was desecrated, everything they had, the pig's blood and all kinds of stuff. They actually took out the stones and removed them from the temple. And when they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profaned, they thought it best to pull it down, because Antiochus had slaughtered pigs on it, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Therefore they pulled it down and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place until there should be a prophet to show what should be done with them. So they were removing all these things that had been defiled by Antiochus, and they're putting them in a place because they weren't sure what we're going to do with these things. They had been defiled by these pigs and these unclean things. We're not sure what we should do with them. So they just removed everything and put it in a place to wait for someone to show them what to do. Then they took the whole stones according to the Torah and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hallowed the courts. And they made also new set-apart vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, which is the menorah, and the altar of burnt offerings, and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick were lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table, that's the showbread, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar and of burnt offerings, which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen have profaned it. So the same day that Antiochus went in and defiled the temple is the same day years later that they actually cleanse and offer sacrifices. So look at what time and what day the heathen have profaned it. Even in that was it dedicated with songs and citherns and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the Elohim of Shemaim, who had given them good success. And they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked all the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields. And the gates and the chambers they renewed. They hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Yehuda and his brethren, with the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that The days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the Mount Kislev, with mirth and gladness. So this is the origin of the feast of Hanukkah, and Hanukkah means dedication. Okay. So you see, how did they celebrate? With sacrifices, with feasts, and just getting together and having a good time.
And they did use the menorah, right?
Because they had taken those things out of the temple before Antiochus could defile them. So when they were, cleaning everything off, they put them back into the temple. So you see, they decorated the temple with crowns of gold and with shields.
So how do we hold to that ceremony?
Well, the same thing.
What do we do?
Like we always do, we're gonna cook something.
Cook. Eat.
Right up my alley.
Sing. Mirth and gladness.
Yeah, so like you said, we had like the kids sing songs, just stuff like that. Like to keep it for the 8 days.
But don't turn it into Christmas where you're giving gifts and all that, because then the next thing you know, it just,
I'm gonna do it how they do. That's I ain't worried about Christmas.
So, and they do it over what, 12 days? Or
8 days.
8 days. Okay. Beginning December the 12th.
So Christmas copy this.
And there's more up, and it's in black.
I ain't worried about Christmas.
And to change the color.
Yeah.
You know what I
You
mean?
can rent a lot of them now.
Yeah.
On holidays.
I just wanna go right by that foot. See Christmas.
oops.
Well, that's fine. She's upset right now because she got in trouble. That's okay. Just leave her alone for some space.
Yeah, I can't even get to them. There we go.
Come here.
Some more.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Madison.
That's right in there. They don't say gave gifts, but that's like how the Jews do it, right?
Yeah.
They give.
Each day, yeah.
All right, so we're going to look at what Josephus wrote about, the Feast of Dedication or the Feast of Lights. All right, so the Yehudi historian Titus Flavius Josephus narrates in his book Jewish Antiquities 12 how the victorious Yehuda Maccabah ordered lavish yearly 8-day festivities after rededicating the temple in Jerusalem that had been profaned by Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Josephus does not say the festival was called Hanukkah, but rather the Festival of Lights. All right, so this is actually what he wrote in his historical book. Now, Yehuda celebrated the festival of the restoration of the sacrifices of the temple for 8 days, and omitted no sort of pleasure thereon, but he feasted them upon every rich and splendid sacrifices, and he honored Elohim and delighted them by hymns and songs. So they ate and they sang. Nay, they were so very glad at the revival of their customs, when after a long time of intermission they unexpectedly had regained the freedom of their worship, that they made it a law for their posterity that they should keep a festival on account of the restoration of their temple worship for 8 days. And from that time to this, we celebrate this festival and call it Lights. I suppose the reason was because this liberty beyond our hopes appeared to us, and that thence was the name given to the festival. Yehuda also rebuilt the walls round about the city and reared towers of great height against the incursion of enemies, and set guards therein. He also fortified the city Bethsura, that it might serve as a citadel against any distresses that might come from our enemies. So again, from the record of Josephus, he talks about eating and singing. 8 days. Okay? And then the record of the Mashiach in Yehuchanan 10 or John 10.
Alright, sound like they're having a Royal Rumble in there. A chair match. A chair match.
Table ladder and chair.
They're playing with the keyboard.
Okay. So
Playing kickball.
this is John chapter 10, starting in verse 22. And it was at Jerusalem that the feast of dedication, and it was winter. So the feast of dedication is Hanukkah, right? And Yahushua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. And then came the Yahudim round about him, and said unto him, How long do you make us doubt? If you be the Mashiach, tell us plainly. So all these Yahudim are gathering around Yahushua, saying, Are you the Mashiach or are you not? Just tell us. Yahushua answered them, I told you, and you believe not. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me. But you believe not, because you are not my sheep, as I said unto you. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. My Father, which gave them me, is greater than all, and no man able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. So again, he's saying the Father is greater than he is. So that whole Trinity doctrine, that never was the case before the Romans. I and my Father are one. So we understand that he's saying I and my Father are one, meaning that they're unified. They're in agreement. Then the Yahudim took up stones to stone him. Yahushua answered them, Many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of those works do you stone me? The Yahudim answered him, saying, For a good work we stone you not, but for blasphemy, and because that you, being a man, make yourself an El. Alright? Yahushua answered them, Is it not written in your Torah, I said, you are Alim. So what is he quoting? He's quoting from Psalms, right? Saying that you are Alim, you are gods, right? So again, this is a result of the influence of the Greek culture, that their understanding of their religious understanding was conformed to the Greeks, where they have, they equate Alim or Elim or El to God, which is a Greek concept. But we'll get into that a later time. Right?
Michael's face.
All right.
I'm just trying to understand. I know where it's coming from. I know, but I need a lesson on the Greeks' understanding of God and in the Hebrew one, because I know you hit on that a while back. And it's pretty interesting.
All right. So they're upset with him because he's making himself to be an El, but Yahushua said in the psalm it says you are Elim, you are gods. So what's the big deal? Yahushua answered them, Is it not written in your law, I said, you are gods? If he called them gods or Elim, unto whom the word of Elohim came, and the scripture cannot be broken, say you of him whom the Father has sanctified and sent into the world, you blaspheme, because I said, I am the son of Elohim. If I do not the works of my Father, believe me not. But if I do, though you believe not me, believe the works, that you may know and believe that the Father is in me, and I in him. Okay. So this all happened during the Feast of Dedication. And if you remember what happened, with Yehuda Maccabah, coming in, defeating the foreign armies, that was their expectation of the Mashiach. because at this time they were under the rule of Rome, right? So they, this the feast of Hanukkah, the feast of dedication, the remembrance of what Yehuda Maccabah had done, and now you have Yahusha in here, and they're like, "Are you the Mashiach or not? You gonna do something about these Roman dudes, or what are you gonna do? What's up?"
I see.
Right?
So that's, yeah, I understand what you're saying. So that's why logically they're asking that. Yeah. But yeah. So we'll talk about it later though. But I got some.
All right. So when we read about the whole thing that Antiochus did in the temple, and we saw that Yahusha hinted at a greater meaning. All right, talking about the abomination of desolation. Right. All right. Yahusha answered and said unto them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Then said the Yahudim, 46 years was the temple in building, and will you wear it up in 3 days? But he spoke of the temple of his body. So again, here Yahusha is comparing the temple to his body, right? Let's go to the next slide. First Corinthians chapter 3. Starting verse 16.
Hold on one sec. All right, there we go. All right, presentation mode.
Okay. Know you not that you are the temple of Elohim, and that the Ruach of Elohim dwells in you? If any man defile the temple of Elohim, him shall Elohim destroy. For the temple of Elohim is set apart, which temple you are. Okay, so this is Paul writing, saying that you are the temple of Elohim. Who is he talking to? Is he talking to everybody in the world? No, he's talking to Yisrael, that the Israelites are the temple of Elohim. We saw that Yahusha called his body a temple. All right, let's go to the next slide.
That cake is off the chain.
He's sitting in his little stroller, so.
Turning up.
If we let him loose,
Forget about it. You got that much straps in there?
1 Corinthians chapter 6, starting verse 16. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man does is without the body, or outside the body. But he that commits fornication sins against his own body. What? Know you not that your body is the temple of the Ruach HaKodesh, which is in you, which you have of Elohim, and you are not your own? For you are bought with a price. Therefore glorify or esteem Elohim in your body and in your Ruach. Okay, again, he's still Paul talking, comparing the body to the temple. Right? Alright, so certain points on that one. Fornication, we'll have to do a lesson on that, because there's a lot of things that people call fornication that are not fornication, and there's a lot of things that people don't consider to be fornication that is fornication.
Yeah. Can you just hit on just two? Just do one, and then what it is and then what it's not. Like,
real quickly.
the most.
yeah.
All right. For example, We talked about this briefly before when we mentioned marriage. If, according to this culture, if you have a situation, for example, hypothetically, a man and a woman get married by the state, and the father disapproved of the marriage. Okay, according to our Torah, that would be fornication.
Okay. All right.
But according to this culture, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right,
You
right.
could go to church, then no one in the church would say anything is bad. But according to our Torah, that's fornication.
Right.
Fornication is basically breaking the laws of breaking the sexual laws. All right, so that would be considered fornication, but in this culture, it would not be considered fornication. Let's go to the other side. A man and woman are not married by the state, but that the man is providing food, clothing, and shelter for the woman, and that woman is only with that man. According to the church, they would say they're fornicating, they're shacking up. But according to our Torah, that's not fornication.
You said if a man and woman are living together?
Mm-hmm. The man is providing food, clothing, and shelter for the woman, and the woman is faithful to that one man. That's not fornication.
Okay.
That was exactly fornication, right?
Yeah, shacking up.
Definitely going to hell for that, right?
But under the agreement that, hey, we're together for good.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Because it says that, and we can get into that. I mean, I know that just opened a whole ball of.
Well, no, I already know, because if that man was to move out and live with another girl and provide for her, that wouldn't be fornication.
Yeah.
So.
But what is it though? I guess that's the question.
He put it depending on what the situation is. He put her away.
Okay.
I think.
But without a bill of divorcement.
No. Putting away and divorce are two different things.
All right. Well, but we're going into
Okay.
it. That's why I didn't want to get into it right now.
All right.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to get into it, because basically, sexual activity has obligations.
Yes.
If you fulfill your obligations, it's not fornication. If you're not fulfilling your obligations, that is fornication.
But it has to be in writing.
It has to be
Two people
according
have
to the Torah.
Okay, have to agree.
To the rules in it, yeah.
Yeah, it has to be according to the Torah.
Because here in the United Snakes of America, you could marry your dog.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
another example. Here in this land, a woman can divorce her husband. According to Torah, a woman does not have that right. So that would be fornication, because if that man does not agree to that divorce and she goes off and marries another man, that's fornication. But in this land, it's not considered fornication.
Yeah, it's all backwards here.
So like when they say we have to go by where we at, so that we have to live by the law where we at. So we.
No, you don't say that. Where does it say that?
Well, this where we at. So if we do that, we breaking the law. We could go to jail.
No, what he would, because I asked him about that. You're only allowed here in America one marriage license.
Yeah.
That's it. But you can marry a bunch of people, but they will only give you one marriage license.
Yeah.
But it's not illegal to marry a bunch of people.
I mean, Muslims do it. You have the Mormons do it. They're not breaking the law.
They just have one marriage license.
Oh, I wasn't just talking about marriage.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah, because it's not against the law for a woman to divorce her husband.
Yeah.
But according to Torah,
Yeah.
A woman doesn't have the authority to divorce a husband.
Yeah.
But I think in the Bible it says that they can only divorce under certain provisions.
Yes.
You know,
I mean,
so.
yeah.
And
So.
that's if adultery or.
Yeah, he said he named that being the only unfaithfulness.
Yeah.
Jesus said that's the only.
Well,
Uncleanness.
That's it. You can only put away for adultery. That's what Yahushua was saying. Divorce is a different issue.
Oh.
Putting a woman away, like we talked about before, we're way off the subject now, but we'll deal with it.
That was the last slide. So.
Yeah, but there's more we have to.
Oh, okay.
Like we talked about before, you know, what the men were doing that was making Yahuwah so upset was basically they were abandoning their wives. And that's putting away that you have a wife, maybe you had a fight, maybe just she irritated you or whatever kind of reason, and you just abandon her.
And get another wife, move on with your life, and she over here by herself.
Yeah, you didn't give her a bill of divorce.
And she can't do anything. She's alone.
She can't marry anybody or anything like that.
Right.
Now it's the exact opposite. In this day and age, the woman lead a man, put him on child support. He go to jail. He can't get married. He can marry Bubba. But that's it. So it's like.
Yeah. So that was what Yahushua was talking about. If she committed adultery, then let her stay in that state because according to Torah she should be stoned. But because they were under Roman rule, they weren't allowed. They couldn't execute them like that. Just like now, you can't stone somebody in this land.
Right. That's illegal. Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's just a brief on that, and that's and that's one of the things that's really hard to deal with because it's a very emotional issue. And even when it gets dealing with Hebrews, because they go by their emotions, and look, the Torah is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's gonna cut right through your emotions.
And then the other thing is though, once you really get all the facts about everything, you see the logic in it.
Yeah.
And when you understand the facts about marriage and relationships in America, you see the idiocy in it, silliness in it.
I think that's one of the hardest ones though. I don't think, like you say, you see the logic. I don't think like Hebrews they see it easy, especially women. Women like that'd be a hard one for them to just even though it's Torah.
Well, I'll tell you this, like, because me and Coy had talked about it, and my whole thing because at first I didn't agree with it, but then I began to look, if you got one woman, she wants to work, get a job, make a bunch of money, and she wants to have kids. You got another woman who might want to stay home, so they could work together on that. You know what I'm saying? But then,
that ain't gonna work, man.
But then,
that ain't gonna work. I don't care what nobody said, that ain't gonna work.
With the American black woman, no. But you get a
black
woman.
Man either. I'm telling you, that's.
But he made a good point. He was saying when he lived in China, when he told them, yeah, I got 2 kids, they're like, well, that ain't gonna work. How's that gonna work? Like they couldn't. That wasn't their reality because you're only allowed to have 1 kid there, and they were like, well, 1 kid would love the other more than. Well, how would that work? That's wrong. They couldn't. Yeah, they were wrestling with that concept.
All the emotional, stuff that people from this society would say about polygyny is the same reasons that they would have about having more than 1 child.
But when, like, I was over in Saudi Arabia, and like what it is, when you look at it, like a nigga here would look at it like, yeah, that's more puss. That's how he's seeing it. It's not gonna work. It's gonna be a disaster.
That's how it's gonna
but when you look at it from when you ground it in the word and you got your lust under control and you're looking at it from an economic basis and you're looking at it from all the different areas.
I don't think it should even be for economic basis. it should be.
I'm just saying there's
be fruitful
benefits in
and
all those.
multiply,
Exactly.
you know?
But the way they got America set up,
Oh, yeah.
you can you can have like 3 kids, then somebody got to stay home
Right.
because daycare is too expensive. Like they purposely
Right.
make it where it doesn't make sense to have a
And
big
you can't
family.
multiply, so you
Yeah,
because you can't afford to.
exactly. But,
Sure.
but back in the day, you have a big family.
Yeah.
The whole family sticks together. Everybody's helping out. You know. But see, they don't want that here. They want you relying on their American system.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Big business.
But we'll get into that. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. You are lively stones, built up in a spiritual house, a set apart priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Elohim by Yahushua HaMashiach. Alright, so I was hitting on these different verses talking about the body is the temple. We're being built up into a spiritual house. What did Antiochus actually do? He went into the temple, he set up a statue of himself, proclaimed himself to be God. He sacrificed pig's blood, he defiled the temple. Okay. What has happened to us as a people? They've given us a religion, this JC, Jesus. When you break down the name Jesus in Latin, which is the language of the Romans, Zeus means pig. When you break it down to Greek, it's talking about the god Zeus, which Antiochus Epiphanes called himself Zeus. And then when you take it down to Hebrew, Zeus means horse, and then you have the verse talking about some trust in princes, some trust in horses, but we trust in the name of our Elohim. Okay, so we see that what Antiochus actually did in the temple has been done to us. That we have been defiled. We have accepted a false God has been placed within us.
False understanding of our word.
Our bodies have been defiled by the pig and every other unclean abomination that we've been ingesting. Alright, so when we come to the feast of Hanukkah, of dedication, what does it mean for us? That we are rededicating our temple to the service of Yahuwah.
Good breakdown. No, that's awesome.
So we're coming back to Yahuwah, we're dedicating our bodies, we're dedicating our spirits, because we're both, flesh and we're spirit. Okay.
So would you say that most of the feast days are sort of where we're rededicating, some type of rededication? Like, I know the 11th,
Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Yes, when you cleaning out all this, getting all the sin, so I don't know, sometimes I think that most of the feast days are about rededicating.
Right, and it's a rehearsal.
Yeah.
We're rehearsing these
things to come too. Some of them.
They are prophecies, they're rehearsals. There are times that's why he talks about, we talked about this, maybe a month or so ago, how many of the set apart times are connected to prophecy. And when you read through the prophecy, you can actually see in the prophecy, it'll talk about palm leaves, which has to do with Sukkot. Or you trading the winepress of his wrath, gathering the harvest of the grapes, that's Sukkot. So a lot of these prophecies are tied in with the feast days as well. So any questions, comments?
Was that a pretty quick lesson for you to? Because I know I hit you last minute. What was that, Wednesday? I said something.
Yeah, I mean that one. I mean, I had some other stuff.
That was wow.
Yeah, so when they like he talking about Antiochus. So in Daniel, that's who when they talking to them, that's who they referring to.
Yeah.
And Daniel, so you okay? So
yeah, because you have a lot of these Christian interpretations that you see brought into even, Hebrew, lessons. They talk about the Antichrist. Oh, the big Antichrist. The word Antichrist is only mentioned one time in the Bible, and it's not even talking about a person. It's talking about a spirit. And it has nothing to do with anything in Daniel or anything else. It's just talking about people that are accepting something instead of the real
like
Mashiach.
a lot of antichrists.
Yeah.
It's not like it's just as big.
But you have this Christianity, in the last days, this big Antichrist, Satan will appear, and it's like.
And a lot of and their doctrine, because it's like, man, you watch a lot of these white pastors do end time prophecy, and it's like, man, you don't see how wicked this country is that you. It's like, so somehow America fits in here to be, friends with Israel or something. We just don't see us in end time prophecy, so we're thinking that means we're friends with Israel. And he's coming, they got all this.
I mean, you have people waiting for a tribulation. It's like, what have we been going through the last 400 years?
I'm tribute. I knew I was in tribulation this week.
And you gonna be more tribulation than I already more than this.
I mean, come on. Can you imagine
it gets worse?
Can you imagine being on that slave ship, going from Africa 3 months in your own excrement?
Yeah. But see, that's their problem. They can't see that. Because I heard them say,
they don't even
the stuff that the Jewish people went through was the worst thing that ever happened in human history.
Yeah.
I was like,
they don't even count like all the people who died in the slave. They don't even count that as nothing.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
That's
That's some Negroes out there. But anyway, let's get back to this Bible.
Like everything that happened. This is the worst mass killing in America ever. And then what about when they all killed 300 of us?
Yeah.
But they don't count. Like I said, what happened to us, they don't count. That's
and stuff like that shows me how that's how they think of it. Yeah. So it's like, that's why I'm about my people. I ain't worrying about y'all and what y'all doing over there. Y'all gonna get dealt with. It's like, if y'all want to come over here and really learn, which you got a small handful of them who do. They sincerely get, they see what this is, but them other ones.
But, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I haven't met one.
Well, I haven't met anybody, but I've seen a handful of videos of people just outright testifying to the injustice.
Good luck.
Anyway, for you viewers online, let me see if y'all got any questions. Nope, no questions on there. So we're gonna go with Exodus Productions. Take y'all out with that, and I'm gonna work on getting this thing a little more structured, like a more professional production. I'm gonna work with the Idea Factory and come up with a smooth way of doing this. So, cause this one here was a lot of little interruptions, but we'll get it right. Yeah, just stay tuned.